The most important thing, I think, is just digging into who you are, what ADHD really is to your brain and your body, what that looks like, and how it affects you positively and negatively. Like, really dig into not just what are your symptoms, but how does it set you apart in a good way? And I think that's therapeutic and it allows us to kind of like shake off all the negative stuff. It doesn't completely go away, but I think we have to make the decision that we want to understand ourselves better and we want to reframe our thoughts.
Thomas Edison, Richard Branson, John F. Kennedy, Mozart, Michael Jordan, Will Smith. That sounds like a list of highly successful titans in a variety of vocations. Why is it that we rarely hear that they have or had ADHD? And you know what we hear even less about? Serena Williams, Emma Watson, Mel Robbins, Whoopi Goldberg, Agatha Christie, Erin Brockovich, Cher. Yeah, the successful women navigating ADHD. And that's exactly why I started this podcast, ADHD for Smartass Women. I'm your host, Tracy Otsuka. I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, a lifelong student, now a coach. I'm also the creator of Your ADHD Brain is A-OK, a system that helps people like you figure out what they should do with their life. And we're here today to talk ADHD, your strengths, your symptoms, your workarounds, and how you proudly stand out instead of trying to fit in. I credit my ADHD for some of my greatest gifts. And you know what? I spy a happier life for you too. So without further ado, a shiny new episode is starting now. Hello, I'm your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for episode number 184 of ADHD for Smartass Women. I hope that you'll subscribe to this podcast and our newsletter over at tracyotsuka.com. My purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. In the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met a one that wasn't truly brilliant at something. Not one. So for all of these reasons, I am just delighted to introduce you to my guest, Danielle House. Danielle is the Chief Executive Officer of Adhd, a medical device manufacturer that focuses on bringing to market industry-disrupting dental products that improve patient as well as clinician experience. In her role as CEO, Danielle leads an incredible team of individuals as they develop innovative products for dental practices and educational institutions across the globe. Danielle is married to her high school sweetheart, and together they have two adorable children. For fun, Danielle enjoys binge reading a great book, trying new restaurants, and traveling to new destinations. Danielle recently received her ADD diagnoses at the age of 32. Oh my God, you've done all that and you're only 32, and has spent the months post-diagnoses working to better understand her brain and how ADHD affects the different parts of her life, healing from a life of imposter syndrome and shame, and learning to reframe her expectations of herself at home, in relationships, and in her career. Danielle, did I get all of that right?
Absolutely. Tracy, thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege to be talking to you today.
Oh, well, the privilege is all mine. So tell us what part of the country you are talking to us from.
I am in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, so the
Wow.
northern area. Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit, well, before we get started, just to kind of give us some frame of reference, can you tell us a little bit about the company that you run? As far as, I guess what I'm asking is, how big of a company is this?
So we are a new company. We started in 2020. We were founded by a practicing general dentist that focuses in pediatrics. And we brought to market a product that helped dental clinicians get back into the work that they needed to do and take care of their patients during COVID. So it's overcomplicated, but to simplify, what we do is we provide a product that allows them to suction aerosols, potentially dangerous ones, and then filter them out so they can so they could go back to work during COVID. And so what we found is that's the new standard of care in dentistry. So that's how we support them right now. But simultaneously, we are also developing multiple other products that focus around pediatrics and other specialties that hopefully will really innovate dentistry and bring better patient and clinician experience.
So, how many employees are there in the company?
So right now we have around 5 full-time employees, and then we have, gosh, I think right now we have about 10 consultants across the country.
Okay. What I'm getting at, Danielle, is isn't this a multi-million dollar company?
It is, yes, ma'am.
And you started it in 2020?
We did, yes.
Oh my gosh. So how did you end up with this company?
So that's an interesting story. And I'll try to make it as articulate as possible because it's something that is hard to explain credibly. But my daughter was about 4 years old, and I took her to her first dentist appointment at this pediatric focused office. And my daughter has always suffered from anxiety. She's a highly intelligent child. And so she was just so afraid, and she had a thousand questions. And we went into this office. It was brightly colored. It was amazing. And she was so happy. But the office was just really special. The dental assistants were all they spoke so kindly and they were so happy. And then this doctor, the dentist, he made her feel so comfortable. But she had, like I said, she had 1,000 questions and was super fearful, but they never pressured her. And I bet I apologized 100 times for all of her questions and her behavior. And they just continued to make me feel really great about who she was and that everything was okay and everything was normal. And I remember looking over and they had like a list of the important things in the office. I forget what they call it, but everything about it was incredible and it was patient centered and creating the best experience for children. And I just remember thinking, I want to work somewhere with a culture like this. It gave me like all the warm fuzzies, and I realized that I was missing that in my current career. And
Mhm.
so about
What
6 months later, maybe. Oh, I'm
Danielle, what were
sorry.
you doing at the time?
I was what was my title? A medical scheduling coordinator for a community health center. So we
Okay.
answered the phones for about 10 offices and all in one location. So I was the coordinator for that.
You were in
So
healthcare.
yes, I was.
Okay.
And so about 6 months after that first appointment, I had been looking for another job, and that office was looking for an office manager. And I applied for the position. I got an interview and it was incredible and it went really, really well. And then I met the doctor and that went very, very well. And I just knew that this was my next, career move. And I ended up getting a phone call about a week later, and the doctor kind of apologized profusely to me because he said he really did feel like I was the best person for the job.
Mm.
But he was worried about that I lived an hour away, and that he was worried my home and work life balance would begin to get to me after a period of time as a mother. And he just didn't want to do that to me. But he said, I just think you're an incredible person and that you're going to do big things in this industry. And we'll probably see each other in the future. And I cried. Um, and I thought that's the nicest no I've ever gotten. But every time I went and took my daughter to the dentist after that, I would bring it up to him and I'd say, do you need anybody for your team? I'll come do your marketing. I'll come run your front desk. I just love to be a part of this. But obviously, I didn't start working for him at that point. But again, about another year later, he called me up out of the blue and said that he was starting a medical device company and that he had created this product and he needed somebody to run this company for him, and that he had thought of me and he wanted to present that opportunity to me.
Oh,
So,
I have
yes.
goosebumps. And so, can you tell us, were you qualified to run the company? Like, did you have the skills, Or did he just see that, oh my gosh, this woman is a leader and she cares so much and she's going to blow this up for me?
Well, that's a great question, and you are poking at my imposter syndrome, to be honest. But I would not say that I was qualified in any way. As far as I didn't have a master's degree, I had most of my bachelor's. I was still in school, but what I think that he chose me because I go after things and with my full heart, and
Mhm.
I don't fail at things that I'm passionate about, and that he wanted this company to be something of a global products brand. And he knew that it was going to take tenacity and it was going to take a lot of work, but he also wanted to make sure that it had the same culture that he had at his other company. And that was the thing that I was so passionate about in my interview with him. So I believe that he chose me for a combination of reasons, but I think it's the same ideals around culture and as well as perseverance. And we've had a couple of conversations about it because I've asked him the same question, and that's kind of the answer he gives me.
I love that story. Okay, so we're going to start where we normally start in most of these podcasts. We kind of veered off, but I wanted to get more of a flavor for who you were and who you were in this company, how you got there, all of that. So thank you for entertaining that. So I'm wondering if you could tell us about your ADHD diagnoses.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, it's relatively fresh officially, but the way I stumbled upon believing that I had ADHD and seeking a diagnosis was actually you. Um, I was watching a TikTok and I forget, I wasn't following the person, but you and this other on this podcast, I think it's called Gold Digger, maybe. Um,
Mm,
yeah, you were talking about the
Jenna
ADHD
Kutcher.
brain of, yeah, the ADHD brain of interest and how women with ADHD become successful the higher in their careers or education they get, and that public education goes wide, not deep. And I remember getting chills listening to you say that because I just felt so heard. It felt like maybe I need to explore this more because I'd never heard that concept before, the wide, not deep in education. And so I looked the whole episode up and I cried listening to you guys talk about things that I'd never heard anyone speak of up to that point. And so then I went and found your podcast and I listened to probably about 4 episodes, and each one just continued to resonate with me. And I just felt so seen. Um, and then everything just felt so validating. Like I didn't really know how to describe it, but it was like my eyes were being open to why I was the way I was and why a lot of things like being the CEO of a company, but struggling in ways that were hard to explain to other people, and my personal life just coming or just disconnecting so much from my career and who I was in that world. Um, so that's how I guess I started doing tons of research after that particular point, and finally I got brave enough to go see um, I believe a psychiatrist to talk about a diagnosis.
So, Danielle, had you known what ADHD was before? Why were you on TikTok, researching ADHD?
I wasn't. Total coincidence. I
Mm.
do love I love self-reflection. I do love to understand myself better. I'm always seeking that interesting things about psychology and things like that. So I definitely wasn't looking up ADHD. It came up on my For You page, which I actually have come to believe that TikTok starts diagnosing people and showing them content when they behave like other people. And
Yeah.
so I do think that TikTok put an ADHD video in my For You page because of the content and because I behave like other people similar to me. But I had no idea that ADHD presented like this at all. I don't think I have a single person in my life that at that point I knew had ADHD. I think I just thought of it as hyperactivity in young children, and then something all the extremes that you see in movies or that's all I knew at the time.
So were you diagnosed as inattentive or combined?
Um,
Or do you
Combined.
know? Combined.
Combined, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And so were you struggling at the time?
I was. I did say I went straight to a psychiatrist, but that's not actually true. I started researching it, and then I was struggling, specifically um, around my memory and short term memory. It was affecting my work, my safety, lots of ADHD tax kind of things happening to me. But then also just things so important like remembering to give my children medication when they were on an antibiotic and things like that. And I started feeling so much shame around those behaviors that I brought it up to my primary care physician when she was trying to prescribe me a medicate or an antibiotic for an ear infection, and I just started crying and telling her I didn't think I could remember to take it. And she said that she had ADHD. And she said that all the things that I'm explaining to her very much sounded like her ADHD as well. And she encouraged me to see a psychiatrist to explore that diagnosis because she felt like I would really benefit from that.
That is wonderful. I love hearing about doctors who hear our symptoms and actually know what they represent, or at least know to suggest, maybe you should go
Right.
take a look at this.
Right. I did bring up the ADHD to her, but
Mhm.
and then when she asked me why do I, why, and I
Yeah.
explained the things I was dealing with, she just validated that.
Yeah. And it was because she also had ADHD.
Right. Similar. She and I are similar ages, and she also has ADHD.
So, did you feel like your symptoms got worse once you had kids? Were you managing pretty well pre kids?
No, my
Okay.
symptoms just changed, and they I stopped, well, I guess what I should say is I believed myself to be a bit of a hot mess. If that's what the back then, it was a joke almost. I can't remember anything. I can't, I all kinds of random things that felt like personality traits.
Hmm.
And then the more successful I became, the more those things didn't make sense and I felt so much shame around them because I am incredibly responsible and I run a company and these things were still happening to me and I felt like I had no control over them and again just so much shame around that. So I wouldn't say that my symptoms got worse. I would just say that I became more self-aware and
Mm.
um,
Well, you
and
were doing
just
even more masking, right? Which is what causes shame.
right, a lot of masking for sure.
Okay. So, once you knew it was ADHD and you had the benefit of hindsight, what are some of the symptoms that you always wondered about, like starting from childhood, that you now recognize as, well, duh, that was ADHD?
Sure. Well, I definitely could never force myself to do homework alone. That was a huge challenge for me, a lot of shame around that. I always needed someone sitting next to me, body doubling, I guess is what they call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That was something that was super frustrating for my mother, who was a single mom and could not fathom why I couldn't just sit down and do my homework like kids are supposed to. And so that was a big one for me. I was also incredibly talkative, and um, that was something that I wish I go back and look and I'm like, that's so obvious ADHD that no teacher caught that. I think my 7th grade study hall teacher called me Rattle Trap, and that
Wait,
ca
she called you what?
Rattle Trap was her nickname for me.
What does that
Quite
even mean?
I have no idea. I guess that I rattled all the time,
Oh my
um,
God, that is so
and it
obnoxious.
obnoxious and quite a bit of shame associated with that particular thing and nickname. I also struggled to stay attentive in class. I was really, really bored very often. There were certain classes, obviously, that were super interesting to me and I loved and I could stay focused. But on the ones that I didn't, like math, um, I could not focus. So I could not do the homework. I could not take the tests, and that really compounded. So lots, I would say When I went and saw the psychiatrist and I started explaining my symptoms, he said, I'm going to finish this assessment, but you present classically ADHD. This is definitely what that is. So, pretty validating, but also shocking that not a single person in my life caught it. So,
Yeah. Well, they didn't know what it looks like in girls, right?
right,
Or women.
exactly.
So, were you a troublemaker or were you a good girl?
A little bit of both. Definitely a little bit of both. I troublemaker in the sense that I couldn't quit talking. I was loud and bossy, and like I said, couldn't really focus, couldn't really execute tasks. I was really terrible with self care, and so I wouldn't call myself a troublemaker, but I also was quite the people pleaser. So
Mm, okay. So, we initially had an email conversation around how successful you are and the fact that even though you're so successful, and it sounds like your success has happened quite quickly, you still really struggle with imposter syndrome. And I am wondering, how is that going? Because it's been a couple months since we spoke.
right, we actually spoke before my diagnosis.
Mm.
And so I have been diagnosed about 2 months. And I would say that the imposter syndrome is still very much there, but I'm starting to recognize and be able to come to terms with my success and how I got here, not despite my ADHD, but because of it, which is
Ah,
profound.
okay. So, what has changed? Let's put the imposter syndrome on the side because I really want to have a big discussion in there. But before we do that, what has changed since you were diagnosed besides what you just said about the imposter syndrome?
Mm, a lot of things, probably every single part of my life. I had no idea that my ADHD permeated so deeply in my relationships, in my behaviors, in my health, every single thing, my parenting. So I have begun using a stimulant medication um,
Hmm.
to control it. I don't even think control it is the right term, but that has been life changing as well. I I can't
You have to
even.
tell us what you're on because people get so mad at me when I don't ask.
Mhm. I completely understand. I would probably have been that person about 3 months
Yeah.
ago. Um, I am on Adderall,
Okay.
and so every 3 weeks or so, I would see the psychiatrist, and we've been steadily increasing until I was at a therapeutic dose. So
Okay.
um,
And it's working and it's really been life changing for you?
it wasn't immediately. I could definitely feel. I felt more articulate. I felt like I could remember my words better. But it didn't last very long, and it definitely didn't touch my memory issues, which was my biggest ADHD symptom at the time that I was aware of and that was affecting my life so significantly. But I would say as the dose has increased, I've seen those things definitely improve much more. And I can honestly say that the medication has truly changed my life.
I love hearing that. So I have a question for you. It's personal, but can you memorize anything?
Absolutely not.
How about the chorus of one song?
Oh, I hyper focus on music, and so I'll listen to the
Oh,
same song 150 times until I burn it out, but it gives me the dopamine. So it depends on
Danielle,
the song.
I would listen to that same song 100 times and I still couldn't tell you what the chorus was.
That's
Yeah.
funny. I probably couldn't tell you unless the music was on, but I love, like, deep, meaningful songs, and so,
Hmm.
like, the words that hit me to my soul, and so I probably couldn't tell you if you just asked me directly, but if the music came on, I might could
Yeah.
do a pretty good job of it.
So, do you do any public speaking?
Oh, sometimes I do not enjoy it. Um,
Can you remember? I mean, if you don't have notes, could you give a speech or would you just kind of be all over the place on Tangent Boulevard?
I am a fan of winging it as
Oh my.
and
I,
I do prepare for things, but that's one of my ADHD symptoms is I last minute prepare, but I
Mhm.
find that I'm more connected to the things that I say if I don't over prepare,
Yeah.
and I'm able to speak more truthfully, and it resonates with people better if I give them the last minute version of me, if that makes any sense.
Okay, but you didn't say that you struggle with anxiety, but I've rarely met a woman with ADHD who doesn't have even a little bit of it. And so I'm curious, when you're getting ready to speak and you're even a little anxious, what does that do to your memory?
It does terrible things to my memory for sure, which
Mm.
is probably why it wouldn't do me any good to memorize those things anyways. I would still probably have to speak from what I know to be truth and really have to understand
Mm.
what I'm speaking about. But I do suffer from anxiety my entire life. Situational is I think everybody has some situational anxiety, but I had anxiety constantly, like an elephant on my chest at all times.
Hmm.
But I can speak to the use of medication to treat my ADHD and how um, significantly that is gone. The tension
The
in my body is
anxiety.
gone. Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
Wow.
Uh,
I love that. And I think what you're saying, which is where I've come down on all of this because of my working memory problems and just this fear of if I have to get out there and speak impromptu, like literally what I know so to be true. I can't even figure out, well, where is it? What is it? What do I believe? And I think where I have finally come down on all this is exactly what you're saying. It's the two words: I need to be myself. And when I am
right.
not able to be myself, that is when I struggle more. So I just have to go with being comfortable with who I am right then and there and what I know.
Oh, that is so true. In any opportunity where I am supposed to just introduce somebody or I just anything like that, I won't know a single thing. I have no idea what I'm supposed to say. And it is because I feel like I have to be a different version of myself.
Yes.
Um, I can talk for hours and go on a soliloquy pretty often, but whenever I'm tasked with being a certain version or speaking about something that people are expecting me to speak on, it's
Hmm.
it's so much more difficult. And like you said, the anxiety and then the memory just all start hitting you all at once, and everything kind of fades away because you're. I think we're so, or for me, I'm so busy trying to present myself physically in a way that's I feel like palatable to others, and I'm watching my how loud I'm speaking, and I'm watching my gestures and I'm trying to be the version that I think people want me to be. And that makes
Mm.
takes my brain away from um, speaking and
Yeah.
actually talking about, what I'm there to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That has just been my thing now. When I start getting anxious, okay, being yourself, be yourself, be yourself. I mean, literally, that's what's going on in my brain. And it's interesting when you're around people. I don't know if this happens to you, but when I'm around people that are very linear brained and that are very corporate and that are very, frankly, boring and in the box, that is when I struggle the most. Versus if I can get around like my own women, like my own people, then they totally get what's going on with me and I'm completely comfortable, and I that's when I'm my best. So it's being
Exactly.
yourself, but also being yourself in the right environment where you can be yourself, right?
That's so true because I've started to recognize the people around me and their neurodiversity, and I am drawn to those people, the people I feel a true connection to that I'm able to bare my soul to, and they bear theirs to me. They're not off put by the way I speak. In fact, they're doing it the same way. We're not interrupting each other. We're having a spirited conversation that we're both engaged in. Whereas when I'm often speaking to someone like you said with that has that linear thinking, they're like, this person's been talking for 4 minutes and hasn't let me speak yet. And it's very different. You have to have different rules in place when you speak to people like that, I feel like. And that's no fun.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk. This is a perfect segue to talk about imposter syndrome. So, just so our listeners know, this term was coined in the 70s by two psychologists, Dr. Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. And I have this written down. I did not remember this. And it's used to describe high achieving people who don't recognize their accomplishments. They feel like they're a fraud and their success must be an accident or a mistake. It can't possibly be, because we're smart and we're interesting and we're funny and, whatever. And. So we're talking about smart, accomplished, successful women who they just don't believe that their success is deserved. And I'm pretty confident that many of our listeners can relate to that. And I'm confident of that because I can certainly relate to that at times. And so you were saying that it's something that you really struggled with, but since you've been diagnosed, you're struggling, does it sound like quite a bit less with
Um,
imposter syndrome?
I would definitely say it decreases every single day. And I think for me, the reason why is because I never could understand, um, like you said, it was luck. Everything was just being at the right place in the right time, or the person making the decision couldn't have possibly, there had to be some reason why they chose me that isn't because I'm great or, good at my job or because, like you said, I'm interesting, or it was always something negative that just allowed me to have this thing. And now I'm starting to recognize that my success does like correlate to some of my real strengths, and that's what's allowed me to take a really uh, not linear path to being an executive. And I've been able to, well, every single or thing I've done in my life hasn't been following the rules or the path that somebody else would take to get there. My first management position, I think I was 24, maybe, and I was the youngest manager that company of over 100 people had ever put in a management role. I had no previous experience as a manager, but they just believed that I was capable. But again, I felt like I thought I fell in that role. I felt like that they just had no other option, and so that's why they promoted me. So I do feel it less now because I can see the strengths that I have in a different light. And so I hope that explains it. I went around
Yeah.
the world to
So
answer that.
no, not at all. So the follow up for me with that question is, so what do you think it was that changed your beliefs about yourself? Was it just learning about ADHD and understanding how your brain worked? So I think what happens to a lot of us is we are consistently inconsistent. Like in school, we're really good in certain subjects, and then other subjects we completely suck at, right? And then that follows into the world. So we may be really good at specific things, but maybe the administrative tasks we really suck. And so that's what we focus on. And so because we're focusing on the stuff we suck in, we think that the other stuff, like you said, is an accident and we must be a fraud because we're not good at everything. And so is it understanding for you that, okay, yeah, I do have weaknesses, but oh my gosh, look at those strengths. And before you didn't even realize they were strengths? Or is it something else?
Mm, I would say that I have flourished in my role as the CEO of this company because the owner of the company takes a pretty hands off approach and gives me the true autonomy to lead the way that's best for me, and allows me to be the type of boss that allows me to let the people who work on our behalf flourish as well. And I've seen a lot of success there, and I've seen being given the reins and being given the opportunity to do things my way is incredible. Like, I've seen the success in direct correlation to my personal choices. And so I've just been able to connect the dots a little bit better now that I see, like, the reason why I didn't do make perfect grades in school makes sense. And so I went on to college, and the reason why I couldn't go to class unless I was super interested is because I have ADHD, not because I'm lazy, and not
Mhm.
because I'm a mess and wasn't driven enough. The reason why I've changed careers often isn't because I'm flaky, it's because I am passionate and I love to be a part of things that encourage growth and innovation and exceptionalism. And I don't like to stay places where I don't feel those things. And all of those, when you reframe your negative traits into what they truly are, it's just easier to see how you got where you got, or who you are truly.
So, Danielle, you were allowed finally to be yourself.
Right.
I have goosebumps.
Oh, me too.
That that's wonderful. Okay, so any other advice you would have for our listeners who might be thinking, "Ugh, I really do suffer with this." Oh my God, what's it called? Imposter complex. I
Right.
always forget those two words, imposter complex.
So, advice I would give around that. That's a tough one because I feel like it's a real personal journey. And the most important thing I think is just digging into who you are, what ADHD really is, like what it actually is to your brain and your body, and what that looks like and how it affects you positively and negatively. Like, really dig into not just what are your symptoms, but how does it set you apart in a good way. And I think that's therapeutic, and it allows us to kind of like shake off all the negative stuff. It doesn't completely go away, but I think we have to we have to make the decision that we want to understand ourselves better, and we want to reframe our thoughts, because no one else can do that for you.
I would think too that you are constantly in action, you are constantly achieving. And at some point, you just have to realize that, okay, this isn't an accident. I'm in all of these scenarios. So there must be something about me that is causing all this success.
Yeah, I mean,
It doesn't sound like you believe me.
I wouldn't say that came to me as an epiphany by any means. It was hard work to get to here, and I
Mhm.
remember talking to my psychiatrist when he was diagnosing me, and I said, you know, that I was really struggling with this. And I'm going to tell you a personal thing. I in my hometown, I don't tell people what my title is. I When I introduce myself or when they ask me what I do for a living, I say I run a medical device company instead of telling people that I'm the CEO. In my small town, in my little world where people know me as something very different than I am today. I feel like it's easier to be small, and um,
Mm.
I can't say it's gone, and I can't say just because I have success and I've achieved, and it's obvious, I guess, to a stranger that that's success.
So do
It's
you,
still something I deal with.
So do you not tell them what you really do in like the real words because you're afraid that they're going to not like you as much, or why?
I just don't think they can. I guess sometimes I feel like it's easier to not. Maybe they won't. They'll believe me, but I don't really know. It's not that they won't like me. It's that they can't quite connect um, the version of me that they have in their head, the hot mess, to the version of me that exists to the rest of the world, maybe. And so I just feel like it's easier not to try. Um,
Are
I
you
didn't go
afraid
to
of
my. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
are you afraid of making them uncomfortable?
No, no, it's about my own uncomfortability. In fact, I skipped my 15-year reunion this year for that very reason. I think the average person would go to their class reunion and happily tell their classmates that they are the CEO of a medical device company. But I would say that, you know, that was about 3 months ago before the actual diagnosis. But I could not force myself to walk into that room and tell those people that watched me, I don't know, have inconsistent success, and that I just didn't think that they would believe that this is real, that this is a legitimate company. I know that sounds ridiculous almost to say it out loud, but those are my innermost thoughts for sure.
So maybe that's the next thing you need to do, huh?
Process that or
No,
do it
actually
or
do
go.
something about it, that you are allowed to have this success, and it is your brilliant ADHD brain that, in large part is responsible for it. And I think then you become a role model to, younger women that, I mean, you're already so darn young that, they see that, okay, maybe I struggled in these areas, but this is the reason why I struggled because I am so creative and.
Right. I am very passionate about that.
Mhm.
I very much want to share what I know, and with other women. I actually found out one of my best friends has ADHD, and I've only known her about 5 years. But I found out she was diagnosed as a child, and she struggles with a lot of the same things as me. It should have been an epiphany for me. And there's so much shame around that, and around getting help, and understanding it better. And
This
um,
was your best friend?
one of my very best friends, yes.
And she
I
she
had no idea that she had ADHD.
because
Um,
she felt so much shame around it that she just couldn't tell anybody?
I don't know if it's that so much as, when she was diagnosed as a child, again, it was misunderstood. It was about hyperactivity. There was stigmatism around medication. And so her parents didn't medicate her. And so she maybe never thought of it again, if that makes sense, like tucked it away.
It
And
does.
then
I
when
mean,
it
you
came
hear
up
this.
with me, she was like, "Oh, yeah, I have ADHD." And I'm like, "Oh, you do?" "Oh." It's actually come up a couple of different times with some different acquaintances and women that I feel comfortable sharing things with.
So, I know when we first, started talking before we pushed the record button, you were concerned about, going public with this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think it's more than anything one of my ADHD symptoms that I've struggled with my entire life is oversharing. I know we all do that, and it's one of the biggest challenges in my life, um, as a leader, as a friend. Um, And so what I guess I was concerned with sharing my truth and saying things that made me look, like I said, inconsistent or incapable of running this company publicly. I was concerned about that. It's not that I
Because
don't
of
want
what
the world.
people
I'm sorry, go
because
ahead.
of what people think they know about ADHD, but in fact, they don't know, right? That, it means you're not very smart. Maybe it means you're too slow. Maybe it means you're too fast. But in any case, you're not competent. You shouldn't be successful at this.
Right.
Is that why? Versus what ADHD really means.
It's less even about, like, just people knowing I have ADHD, because I actually have shared that publicly. It's more about me sharing my dirty secrets about the things, my symptoms and the things that I still struggle with to this day. I didn't know what I would say in this moment of, vulnerability. And so I had just concerns that I might share things that, you know, were uncomfortable for me, for others to know that I struggle with, if that makes sense.
It completely does. In my experience, however, when we have guests who talk about their ADHD, once the episode airs, what they come back and tell me is there was just a freedom around it because the shame is dissipated. And obviously, your people don't know that you're their people until you speak up and become visible, right? And you're in
Right.
such an amazing place in your life to be able to do that so that, again, especially other women who have ADHD can say, oh my gosh, look at what she's done. And she's now my role model. I want to be, like her. I want to do some of the things that she's doing.
Well, that sounds lovely. And honestly, I just would love to, um, even one person, you know, help them see that what is normal, and or what is okay, and that you can find something that you're passionate about and see success in that, even kind of if you haven't found that yet, in your early uh, part of your life, I guess. I definitely didn't see myself here in medical device. It 5 years ago, 3 years ago. I just wanted to do something, um, I don't know, that I was passionate about, and I would have never known that was medical device. And to be frank, I wouldn't have thought I was smart enough to be in this world. But it's absolutely the most interesting thing I've ever done, and I get to be in conversations and be working with people who are doing incredible work, just so challenging but interesting, and really making a difference. And I just adore what I do, and what we're able um, to bring into the world. So I would just want to hopefully inspire someone else to keep seeking something more and not be ashamed of job hopping or, looking for the thing that brings you joy, that you don't dread Monday mornings, that you're
And
you're excited to go.
and so do you think that really for you is the key, that it would be much harder to do this in an area that you didn't have so much passion for. But because you love this area so much, the sky is the limit and you are going to be better in doing it because of that hyper focus that we have when we're really interested.
Oh, absolutely. 150%. I can say that with my whole heart, that the success that I have is completely attributed to working in an environment of something that interests me every single day. Also, I don't do the same job every day. This is a
Mm.
startup. So every single day I learn something new. I'm challenged with solving problems that aren't maybe even what somebody would think a CEO is doing. We're really doing something very novel. And the constant stimulation, that constant challenge has been incredible for me and kept me interested in something. I don't think just because I had a big title, I would have stayed somewhere. It just, it's not enough for me. And so that on top of being able to um, choose the team that's around me and empower them and really give them opportunities for personal and professional growth and support their mental and physical health. All of those things I've been allowed to do, which are so important to me. And I think that's why I'm truly flourishing in my career, is because all those boxes are checked. So
So, Danielle, that's another testament to this whole idea that I see so many ADHD women in these low level jobs. They are not living to their potential. They are much too smart, much too creative.
right,
Um, and the deal is that they need to get to the higher levels, right? Because if they can get to the level where they're the CEO and they're the one that is basically running the show and making the decisions and learning every day, that is what we do best in versus, making sure that, oh, I don't know, there's enough copy paper in the copy machine or, everybody has whatever it is that they need on that spreadsheet. I mean, those things tend to be much more difficult for us. We are idea people. And we're also the kind of
absolutely.
people that can take those ideas and put them into action when we're passionate about what we're doing.
That is the truth. I completely agree with you. I believe that when you put a person, specifically a woman with ADHD, in a role that is repetitive or they've already learned and hit their ceiling, they will stop flourishing. We burn out, like we burn bright, and then once we learn everything there is to learn, we start to go downhill, and that's we either seek another place of employment or to find that stimulation again in that, or I feel like we stay out of shame or financial responsibility, and we just slowly like kind of shrivel up and we become less of ourselves. And I think that ADHD women are super powerful, and I, all the things that make us unique are the things that make great leaders. I think we're empathetic to things that the corporate world does not have empathy for. Being 5 minutes late in the morning, okay, it doesn't matter. Those things don't matter. Where do you work? Well, I prefer to work everywhere. I prefer to work in coffee shops. I don't like to work in an office. So our entire company is remote. We work anywhere we want to. My employees, um, they have a place they want if they want to work, and it's a collaborative space. But they work from coffee shops. They work from, the beach, and they work from home if they want to. But ultimately, they are given the freedom to be the best versions of themselves. I don't want to put the people who work for me in boxes. I like to choose the people that I really truly believe that they have, limitless potential, and then empower them to believe that in themselves. And I've just seen incredible results, and I have a fantastic team around me. I
Ah,
think because of that.
it sounds like it. So, Danielle, what do you think the key to living successfully with ADHD is?
Mm. I would say if I could only say one thing, the key for me would be having empathy for yourself and grace. Um, that would be my top one.
It's brilliant. So, what are the ADHD traits that you feel are responsible for your success?
Passion, hyper focus, and it's maybe attention to detail. Not detail, but random details that
Yes, that you
everyone else
care
isn't paying
about.
attention. Right. The things that you end up being the only person in the meeting that remembers this random thing that allows, like it to go somewhere different and to give you something really novel. I would say that those are the things that I feel are responsible for my success. Yeah,
Do you feel like you use your creativity a lot in your current job?
absolutely.
Yeah.
hmm As a startup, I am a part of every single decision that's made at probably a much deeper level than the average CEO. And so I'm a part of the marketing initiatives and down to the creative copy and um, I, all of those things. We also are making medical devices, and there's a lot of round table like. How do we solve this? How do we feel the user is going to feel about these things? And I've seen the opportunity to be creative in ways that I didn't know were, I guess, creative outlets, like
Yeah.
new ways.
Yeah. Do you have a number one ADHD workaround for us?
Hmm. I would say embracing self care and supports that make sense to your needs. So for me, I've embraced, uh, having a housekeeper that comes once a week, so I don't feel the shame around those things, and I'm able to focus on my children and my family and my work. And I am not great about my washing my face and remembering to put on these things. And so I've given myself the permission to go get a facial once a month and rehabilitate the thing that I can't seem to accomplish like everyone else. Um, it's if you in a phrase, it's just giving yourself permission to find the tools that you need without shame because they don't like not everybody needs to go get a facial every month, I guess. But for me, it's very important. So if that makes a lot of sense, that's been super helpful for me.
I love it. So, Danielle, where can people find you if they want to know more about you and what you do?
Me personally, I love LinkedIn, so I'd be happy to connect and network with anybody who wants to send me a connection request and talk more.
And what is that URL? Is it literally Danielle House?
It should be. It
Okay,
should
we
be.
will find it. We will find it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go right on LinkedIn and let's see if we can find it. So it's linkedin.com/IN/house Danielle with 2 L's. Okay, so where are we? Do. Oh, guess what? We're at the end, Danielle. So I'm going to put all this stuff in the show notes as far as your link. And I just wanted to say thank you so much, Danielle, for spending time with us here today.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time that we spent together, Tracy. It's a real honor, and I mean that you're the catalyst to me understanding myself better. So thank you so much.
I love hearing that. So thank you for saying it. Gold stars. Anyway, so that's what I have for you for this week. If you like this episode with Danielle, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. And, your reviews help in that regard. So, as always, you're listening to ADHD for Smartass Women. You can come join me over at tracyoutsuka.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week. You've been listening to the ADHD for Smartass Women podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Outsuka, and we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Not coincidentally, ADHD for Smartass Women, it's also the name of our free Facebook group. We're a totally smartass community of successful, ambitious women who share our ADHD wins, questions, and workarounds. Join us at tracyoutsuka.com where you can also find more information on our Your ADHD Brain is A-OK system. I spy a happier life for us, and I'll see you again next week.